Soldiers of the American 3rd Infantry Division, who were in Anzio, near Naples, could not believe their eyes. They heard the distinct sounds of a light motorcycle engine, but they had not seen anything like it before, and only when the source of the noise was very close, they were able to see this strange transport device. 60 centimeters high, 1.60 meters long, and about half a meter wide. But the strangest thing was this. 2 rows of caterpillars passed around the camouflage-colored device. It was a mini tank. It is not known how many more American soldiers saw a similar device, but then could no longer report it. When the mini tanks got close to their targets, usually near enemy positions, the German soldier on the other end of the control cable would detonate 75 kilograms of explosives. Dozens of special vehicles 303, as they were officially called, with gasoline engines were blown up during the German offensive against the positions of the landed Allied troops in southern Italy in mid-February 1944. This special weapon, dubbed the Goliath, was just one of the unusual tanks with which both sides tried to gain superiority over the enemy during World War II. The idea of creating a remotely controlled unmanned special transport device capable of delivering a large amount of explosives precisely to the target was in the air by the beginning of World War II. The first device of this kind was created by the French defense firm Camouflage. During the occupation of France, Camouflage engineers drowned their prototype in the Seine, but the Germans managed to fish it out. Heavy charge carrier. At the same time, the German concern Borgward was working on the creation of a similar device, but it was more than 6 times larger than the French prototype. This heavy charge carrier, which received the official designation Special Machine 301, was capable of delivering explosives weighing up to 500 kilograms to the target. Most of the way to the target, this Caterpillar vehicle overcame under the control of the operator, and only for the last few hundred meters was it provided for guidance by radio, which was supposed to be carried out by the driver who left this special vehicle. After laying the load, the moving device returned back using a remote control. A driver got into it, who produced an explosion of the charge and then prepared for the next operation. Such a concept did not justify itself. Although the heavy delivery vehicles looked like tanks, they were not as heavily armored. Special vehicles became the target of enemy fire, but they did not have the necessary protection. Therefore, Borgward engineers simultaneously strengthened both the armor plates and the engine. However, the use of such devices still looked like a suicide operation. Drivers often left their vehicles too early. The last of about 1,200 manufactured vehicles with installed FOSS patrons in 1945 was converted into a tank destroyer. In contrast, the Goliath was supposed to explode along with its charge, and thanks to the presence of a cable connection, the operator from a more or less safe distance could control it and then undermine it. Goliath with a Zündapp engine. The first version, equipped with 2 quiet electric motors, was not very reliable and moreover very expensive, since the cost of one copy was about 3,000 Reichsmarks. However, more than 2,500 of these devices were built, most of which were used and, accordingly, destroyed. They were mainly used on the Eastern Front. Adopted in April 1943, the gasoline version with a 12-horsepower Zündapp engine proved to be much more efficient. This device had a higher speed, a greater range, up to 10 kilometers, and was able to deliver a larger charge by weight. Until the spring of 1944, more than 4,600 units of these devices were manufactured, and then several hundred more, once again modified models. However, Goliath also had serious shortcomings. After it was discovered by the enemy, it was not very difficult to disable this mini tank. Its weakest link was the control cable. Already in the northern part of Italy, American soldiers realized that it was necessary to fire from rapid-fire weapons at the place that was located directly behind its stern. In most cases, it was possible to damage the cable in this way, and the Goliath failed. British and American soldiers took pleasure in blowing up immobilized mini-tanks, but this activity cost the lives of many people. Allied soldiers soon figured out how to deal with these Caterpillar guided self-propelled bombs. The Goliath ceased to be dangerous. although these devices were used until the very end of the war. Canvas floats and screw drive. Allied troops had special tanks equipped with canvas floats and a screw drive. Their development began to engage in the British General of the Armored Forces Percy Hobart. Like Heinz Guderian on the German side, he was already a pioneer in the development of tank warfare in the Royal Armed Forces in the 1920s and 1930s. However, the eccentric Hobart often antagonized his conventional comrades, and in addition, he was in poor health. After Hobart had successfully formed 3 armored divisions, British Chief of the General Staff Alan Brooke appointed him commander of a special unit that was to learn from the 1942 disaster in the Dieppe area. During the attempted landing operation, the most modern tanks used at the same time turned out to be unable to overcome even the simplest coastal fortifications and provide support to the units landed on the shore. Hobart directed the development of unusual vehicles, amphibious tanks with a large inflatable canvas, float, and an additional screw drive. This model was called the Sherman DD, and on the basis of the standard American tanks available in large numbers, the Crab was made. This Sherman model had a motor-driven threshing machine, as well as additional frontal armor. This made it possible to lay corridors and minefields. The Bundeswehr still uses a similar principle in its trawls mounted on special tanks. On the basis of the British Churchill tank, special structures were created on which flamethrowers or mortars were installed. Of particular interest was an apparatus called the bobbin, which paved a 100-meter path for tanks through impenetrable swamps or sand, and after that retained the ability to participate in hostilities. Hobart toys for the swampy area. But perhaps the most important vehicles were unarmed models with the humorous name Hobart's Toys, which were often mounted on the chassis of the now useless American Grant and Lee tanks. They were converted, for example, into mountain tanks or bridge tanks, and they showed themselves brilliantly in these areas. Percy Hobart developed his toys based on fresh ideas, but at the same time he acted very realistically and relied on technically proven devices, whereas German engineers were engaged in completely new projects. Perhaps the most absurd of these was the heavy minesweeper, the prototype of which was developed at the Krupp factories. It was created in 1940, when the Wehrmacht High Command announced a competition for the production of a wheeled minesweeper. However, this special installation significantly exceeded the specified parameters: 2.70 meters high, 3 meters wide, 10 meters long, and weighing 40 tons. The length of the heavy cleaner was 15.63 meters, the height was almost 4 meters, and the weight was 130 tons, and therefore it could not move on normal roads or pass under bridges on the way to its possible application. It was mounted at the Hillersleben military training ground, and it was there that American soldiers discovered it at the end of April 1945. In one of the hangars in France, traces of this giant are lost, and most likely he went to scrap.